So when I first saw Stu, S-T-U, Stu, he was on a picture on a Springer Rescue website, and he was brown and white, and he had this detached look in his eyes, and then this long pink tongue that lolled out of his mouth awkwardly, and he had spiky fur on top of his head. If you've seen The Lion King and the hyena, Ed, that's what Stu was like. The overall effect was sloppy and a little bit unhinged, and I thought, I have got to meet this guy. And so my husband probably was wondering if I was holding on to sanity. He talked with me like, Beth, we have a Springer, Cocobella, Montana. We had rescued her from an elderly couple that had completely spoiled her. She was used to pancake breakfast every Sunday. And she came to us with a long line of relatives. All had three names: Sir Maximus Carpenter, Dooley Rolling Thunder. She was very fancy. But I really got interested in the idea of Stu because the way that I worked emotionally was that Cocobella would be my heartbreak insurance. Stu would be my heartbreak insurance in case Cocobella passed. So if Cocobella passed away, there would be that dog-shaped hole in my heart, and I could just immediately shove another dog into that space and keep moving forward. So my family humored me, and we went out to Rathdrum, Idaho to meet Stu at the kennel. And this was a huge kennel. There was a lot of panic barking at this facility. Stu was by himself in a chain link fence in a gravel area, and he wasn't doing anything to impress us. He was actually just snuffling around in a really panicked way. The kids tried to throw a stuffy at him, to him, not at him. And he went over, smelled it, and then he humped it, and then went back to sniffing the gravel. And the Springer Rescue representative tried to explain, well, Stu's failed multiple adoptions. And in fact, he'd been owned by a hunter who was maybe disappointed in his hunting skills and threw live fireworks into the kennel with Stu. And I thought, I have got to adopt this dog. And so we did. And as you can imagine, the first few months of his adoption were crazy. He was like Taz from Looney Tunes. He really just could not settle. We gave him CBD, and that just made him spin around and pee all over the house. We tried to have Coco coach him up on being a dog. So we'd go for walks and go to the dog park. And we'd show up at the dog park, and Coco, it was like Norm from Cheers. She'd show up and it'd be like, Coco, and all the humans and the dogs would be really excited. And we'd let her off leash and she'd run away smiling. And then Stu would look at us like, can I? And we'd be like, you shouldn't. But we'd let him go for a little bit, and then guess what he did? Inevitably, he'd go over, he didn't know how to play with other dogs. So his move was to sniff around the dog and then hump it. And then we'd have to run up there, grab Stu, pull him back, and say, I'm so sorry. And so we spent a lot of time with him, and it got a lot better. In fact, he became one of the greatest Springers of all time in our household because he was just so awkward and funny, and he just wouldn't stop trying. So Cocobella, we could throw her something, she'd catch it every time. Could have gone pro. Stu, we'd throw it, and maybe one time out of 20, he'd get that catch. So he definitely could have been the poster boy for a failed hunting dog. And he didn't know how to cuddle. We'd invite him up on the couch like, hey, Stu. And then he'd come up, and he wouldn't curl up like a cinnamon bun, or he wouldn't spoon with us. He'd put his ribs across our ribs and try to cuddle, and then just give up and kind of become a blanket. And when we went to the lake, I loved stand-up paddleboarding, but Stu wanted to be on it with me. So it became a sit-down paddleboard for me for about 5 years. And I learned to not mind because he just was my little barnacle. But then we faced a big dilemma in June 2025. I'm gonna be okay. So we had a family trip that we worked on for about 2 years, 18 of us, ages 1 to 77. we'd be going to Germany. And we wanted to patch up some holes in our family story. We'd read a short excerpt about how we had a farm that was actually a castle, and that our family had been in that property for 1,000 years, and we still had a relative there. So we thought, oh, we've got to go check this out. And luckily, my brother, who got National Guard orders to the Netherlands to return a plane, crossed the border, met the Von Scheele family, and he was charming enough that they thought, well, sure, we'd be open to 18 of you coming. And so we decided we would leave Stu and Coco behind, even though Coco was almost 15 and Stu was, who knows, maybe 12. But we left them with some high-tech dog feeders and water dispensers and amazing dog sitters and my sweet, sweet mother-in-law around the corner. And we left for the trip of a lifetime. And then about 3 days into the trip, we got the text. Yep. So Stu couldn't move his back legs. He lost the use of his like lower half of his body. And we checked the Ring camera, and we could see him lying there panting. And we knew what we had to do because nobody could read that dog's mind. It would have taken someone to know when Stu needed to go to the bathroom and carry him when Stu needed water or food. So we realized we had to euthanize him. So the next day, Diane was sitting, my mother-in-law was sitting in the vet's office with Stu, and she had had back surgery. So Stu was on the floor and she couldn't sit with him. And then we were on the phone at about midnight in Germany, and we just had to talk to him over the phone. So then it turns out our dog sitter's dad, Dr. Rob Dorn Donnelly, history professor of Gonzaga University, hardly knew my dog. He sat on that floor and he petted my dog and fed him cookies and talked to him and gave him the first chocolate-covered marshmallow of his life right before he took his final breaths. And we were just heartbroken. And my daughter wisely decided that she would handle those feelings and mourn at the Airbnb, where I was like, well, let's just work through it. If we have big feelings, you know, you just try to contain them. And my husband and son were very brave because they got in a car with me on the Autobahn. And it's confusing for people that have to deal with someone who's trying to always be strong and repress their feelings, because it can come out in surprising and even really aggressive or passive-aggressive ways. So people might ask me when I'm sad, would you like a hug? And it might come across like, oh, no, I don't need a hug. Or my husband, I think he might have asked me in the car when we were going on the Autobahn, would you like to listen to a song that maybe you'd enjoy? And then he has to deal with my nonverbal, passive-aggressive message like, you're being such a backpack. Why don't you just choose the song that you want? And I decided that, you know, something shifted in me that day. And I think it was the dignity and the kindness that the Dorn Donnelly family showed my dog, and then my mother-in-law showed my dog. And I thought, you know, I probably should show my family that much kindness and dignity too. And so a few days later, we got to, and I also decided that I just didn't want to carry that baggage into this new kind of story of ourselves. We thought we were people that had kind of been really tough sheep ranchers and Kansas farmers, and then we find out that we're also part of this different kind of toughness. This family that had this farm and had had a role in the community and so much more. The Von Scheele family wanted to tell us about our history, and they shared one particular story about a knight, Roberto Von Scheele, who sieged the castle with so much persistence that he ended up being offered the hand of the only child, Elizabeth. And honestly, it made me think of Stu and how he tried and tried. Did my knight. And then And then my Von Shayla family, they were so unflappably kind without a hint of passive aggression. It's like, how do they even do this? So our big family dinner got moved a couple of times. There was a World War II bomb found. The kitchen had a big issue just within within a really quick series. And so they had to move our dinner. And then they even put up with one of their country cousins, me. At breakfast, I went to go grab a piece of bacon with my fingers. If you live in a castle in Germany, you don't eat bacon with your fingers. But they were still really nice. I could just see they're like, whoa. And then I grabbed the pitcher, and it was just different enough that when I went to go pour coffee for everyone, the entire thing spilled all over the white breakfast linens, and hot coffee went everywhere. But they were still so nice. There weren't those walls of shame. There wasn't space for that. And it was like, I realized in that moment that I was a human version of my sloppy, messy Springer. And it was like I had a furry shield of love that could make me feel like it's okay to be messy and to feel what I need to feel in that moment. And so later on that day, my aristocratic relative went to go pour water for my daughter at a cafe, and then he spilled the water all over the table. And instead of feeling nervous for him or embarrassed for him, we just looked at each other and we had a good laugh with our family.